How's everybody doing?
Good. What are you up to?
Good.
Happy Friday.
We are sitting here in the barn down at the ranch having a couple of cold beers, and I was just catching up with old Roger. He hasn't called in a couple of months, but good to have you back, man. How are things out in Midland?
It. Thanks for having me. It's good to be around. I've been traveling quite a bit here lately, so spent quite a bit of time on the road.
You still building your Bitcoin mines and all that?
Yeah. Matter of fact, we have 5 developments going on right now, and about to kick off another 4 of them. So we're staying.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, it's been in South Carolina. Have a project going on with the Catawba Nation, building out some mines there in South Carolina, just outside of Charlotte.
Interesting. So, I mean, that's all still built off the natural gas and everything, correct?
It depends on my location. I've got some locations where I'm right next to a combined cycle natural gas power plant. A lot of others where I'm just grid connected. That particular one at the Catawba Nation will just be grid connected, but we're also looking at purchasing. We're pretty close to finalizing a purchase of a combined cycle power plant there in South Carolina.
Damn. They went from casinos to crypto, huh?
Yeah. It's been a pretty interesting business the last 16 months or so.
Awesome. Well, good to hear from you. Hey, Colin, what are you working on these days? Y'all started drilling yet?
No, not yet. We got plans coming up this summer, though. We're kind of waiting for the mud season to pass. That way we get hit with crop damages, by drilling in the summertime. But yeah, so that's what we're waiting for. Is we're waiting for the weather. Good times. No drilling yet.
Holy shit! Is that actually Lindsay?
Uh-oh.
Wait, is she sitting there at work?
Working hard.
Hardly working. Hey,
It's my job.
what are you doing these days, Pollard? Are you in Dallas?
I'm back at Dallas. I ate entirely too much food in Austin. It's the only good thing it's got going for it.
They do have some interesting restaurants in Austin. I will give them that.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. Outside of that, I hate that freaking city, though.
Yeah, I mean,
too many people.
Generally have to agree with that sentiment.
It's like Houston, except it's got good food.
Hey, Jode, how many jobs are you working right now? Can't hear you. He's probably muted us and himself at this point. I think, is the intern sitting in his car, or is he back in the apartment now?
I'm going to Chicken and Pickle for happy hour.
Nice.
Survey company's paying for drinks, so couldn't say no.
Wait, seriously?
I mean, hell.
Yeah.
T. Baker Smith hasn't done jack shit for us. All I got was a happy holidays email from those assholes.
Oh, shit. Intern just started a fight.
They need to step up their swag game. I got a fucking badass knife from Topographic. I don't even use Topographic.
Carhartts are awesome. They hand out Carhartts.
I mean, I haven't gotten any good gifts yet. So, at $115 oil, some free drinks is probably the least they can do.
Oh shit.
Are we at 115 today?
Yeah.
It punched right through it.
Oh, cranked.
Damn. I mean, shit's still popping off in Ukraine, and what somebody earlier on Twitter was joking about what's wrong with all these Texans trying to go fill up gas. Like the price of gas is going to go down before they have to fill up again. And it's like, that's not the point. It's going to keep going up.
Yeah. Stock up.
Yeah.
They're not thinking that the price is going to go back down. Like they're just trying to get it before it's $10 a gallon, you know?
Yeah. Raises 25 cents a gallon tomorrow.
So everybody keeps talking about demand destruction and how, you know, $150 oil, $200 oil, whatever it is, any sustained 130 plus pricing, people keep saying it's going to result in, you know, an increased push for renewables and electric vehicles and all that shit. And I mean, my question is, where the hell are they going to get the power to do all of that? Because switching off fossil fuels isn't something where you can just turn it off like a light bulb.
It's natural gas, really. I mean, it's electric vehicles is, I think, bullish case for natural gas, if anything.
How do you power the damn things without fossil fuels?
Exactly.
Unless
can't.
unless you say we're going to build out nuclear, and everybody knows it's going to take you about a decade to get nuclear power up and running.
And
Yeah,
how many billions?
Speaking of, hey, Roger, do you happen to know, is there anyone using nuclear power for Bitcoin mining?
Yes. There
What?
are miners that sit at power plants, nuclear power plants. If you look up, I read an article of, I want to say there's a company, Talon Energy. Look up Talon, and Talon is set up at nuclear power plant.
That's pretty badass. I mean, and it's completely renewable, right?
Correct.
Once you get that reactor, you just have to keep it going.
That's it.
I don't like, I saw a tweet a week or two ago, and it was talking like the biggest proponent or opponent, I should say, of nuclear are guys wanting to build windmills and solar farms. Outside of that, I don't see the big issue with nuclear, unless you have obviously a tsunami hit it. But just if you don't have to worry about that, then I don't see the big deal with it. It's kind of common sense, I would think.
Well, I mean, over in Russia, they're parking, you know, those giant barges with nuclear reactors on them and powering cities and ports and stuff off of that. So, I mean, I don't think that you're going to have the same power output doing something like that as you would with a land installation, obviously. But I mean, shit, that nuclear facility in Ukraine that the Russians just took over, I mean, I'm assuming they're just going to turn off the power, right? Wouldn't that be kind of the whole point of taking
Well, you got to
over
That's
a giant
what I would
installation
think.
like that?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to blow it up.
Hopefully they won't blow it up.
Yeah, I read something. They were shelling one earlier, a town or something, near one of the nuclear plants. It's like, that's just, from a military standpoint, I'd be flipping the boss as a bird and say, I'll see y'all down the road. I ain't hanging around for that. Start launching artillery shells at nuclear. Like knowing what it is there, and you're just bombing targets nearby. That's just that's dumb to me.
So
Yeah, you're
I saw
playing with fire.
I saw on the news this morning that there are quite a few countries, the UK being one of them, that has told their citizens that if you want to go over to Ukraine and fight, that they will absolutely let you go do that, and they are not ever going to try to prosecute you for war crimes or any shit like that if you want to go try to defend Ukraine.
Oh,
And
I've already got an email about it.
honestly,
Oh, damn.
I think there's probably a lot of people that are going to be like, fuck yeah, we're going to war.
They're emailing. They're launching their. It's like the French Foreign Legion of Ukraine, and they're actively
Yeah.
advertising. And
They
they're like, "Come get to the airport. We'll take care of you." Like they're. I don't know if they're getting a hold of the DoD list or what, but they're emailing a bunch of military guys like, "Hey, buddy, come on over. We'll feed you. Just shoot
have you
communists for a day."
have you talked to anybody that's considering doing that?
Oh fuck yeah! They're paying you to do it.
I mean, I read
You get
something.
paid.
I read something like a month ago that there were somewhere around 300 U.S. mercenaries in Ukraine, and they were making like 60 grand a month,
Yeah.
and that if it turned into an actual wartime situation, that they would be clearing over $1 million a year.
Oh yeah. Well, I've got buddies that used to do EOD and stuff in Iraq, and basic training police, you'd make 150 grand a year tax free. But on the flip side, you don't have air support. You don't exactly have the greatest medical, and it's really hard to get insurance too. So if you die, you're kind of leaving your
Yeah.
family in a bind.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that if I'm the type of guy who's going to respond to an email from Ukrainian hackers saying, please come to our country and fight and defend our country, and we'll give you 72 Ukrainian versions, I'm probably not that worried about my insurance, bro.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Like guys don't think about that, and then they lose a leg or something as a contractor, and it's like, oh yeah, you got to find your own way home too. Like it don't work like that. But
Yeah, but I mean, like, that kind of shit happens just going and getting vaccinated. So what's the big deal, right?
dude, I'm so pissed about that shit. I went and got it, and like it's all the shit's coming out, mainly in like Europe and stuff, where they're actually admitting what's going on with those vaccines. I'm pissed because I had a bunch of issues with it. I got dizzy as hell and went to the doctor, and they sent me to a neurologist and all this shit.
Damn.
It was a
Do
lot
they
of
let you
fun.
smoke in doctors' offices still?
No, I wish.
You weren't sitting there ripping your Marlboro Reds?
I did step outside though.
So, hey Roger, what are you seeing with all of the increase in? I mean, everybody is talking about mining Bitcoin now. It seems like pretty much every single person on EFT is now a Bitcoin miner in some form or fashion. I mean, are we going to get to a point where it's so oversaturated that nobody's going to be doing it anymore? I mean, is this just like the buildup before the crash, or what are you thinking on that?
I see it as right now we're experiencing what is the industrialization of mining.
Okay.
So you're really starting to see large players, private equity, lots of capital pour into this market. And so maybe the small guys will start getting squeezed out because they can't access cheap energy. But at the end of the day, it's a game of energy arbitrage. We're trying to buy it as low as we can in one market and make as much as we can in another. So I do see with what's going on, small guys having issues of participating.
So everybody kind of has this myth about, well, if you've got stranded gas or you're flaring gas or whatever, just start mining Bitcoin with it. And I keep telling people that, I mean, you and I have had conversations about this, years ago, that if you're not operating at scale, you're not ever going to have a return on investment. So it's very interesting to see that people still have this public perception that you can just go ahead and start mining Bitcoin at every oil and gas well in the United States. And that is, I mean, technically you could,
Sure.
but you're going to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on mining equipment that's never going to pay for itself, right?
Well, yeah, because a lot of it you have to include that power generation cost. For instance, most of my locations are grid connected. We do purchase power plants, but mainly it's because we can get some lucrative pricing at this point for kilowatt hour rates or lease rates, hosting rates as well. And so the problem that you have with stranded assets or mining with stranded assets is you have to buy that power generation equipment. So with flared gas, as a miner, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to go and buy a recip engine or a turbine that I could instead of use that capex to buy more miners that are going to generate a faster ROI than some power gen equipment. And unless you're an operator, I really don't see, the people that seem to promote it are the ones that are selling products for it, whether it's
Right.
containerized solutions or they're selling the power generation equipment. They have an incentive to promote it. But in reality, as a miner, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I asked, I think it was last week on Twitter, if anybody knew of anyone who was mining Bitcoin using sour gas. And then I had two people that responded. One guy is in Alberta, and he showed some pictures of their setup with the, giant mufflers on top of their, I'm not sure how they're, cleaning their gas or whatever stations. And then another person said that he had just set up a mine in Atascosa County, which is, right 30 minutes from where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's close.
That's something that I think is really interesting because I've always understood that you're going to run through all of your generators and everything pretty damn quick.
You will.
Yeah.
Your O&M is going to be outrageous.
So then my other thought was, if you coupled a Bitcoin mine with like a gathering and aiming plant, wouldn't you just be making a shit ton of money if you're hooked up to the grid, taking everybody's sour gas? Because that's a problem down here in the Eagleford. There's only a few companies that will actually take our sour gas.
What do they do with it?
Send it through an aiming plant
and just clean it up. Because I've got clients that run their equipment off sour gas, and it's a headache. Like it is absolute nightmare
with sour gas.
Yeah,
now behind an aiming plant, maybe.
You gotta the mechanics are out there constantly, electricians are out there constantly. But
so
it's a nightmare.
Isn't sour gas also an issue for your pipeline gathering system? Because getting it to your aiming plant, I understand your infrastructure costs and everything to set up your gathering system is so much greater. And then your ongoing investment for maintenance and repair and replacement and everything. Yeah. So I can't imagine that these contracts are, I have nothing to do with that side of our business, but I can't imagine that they're that favorable for us.
Now, you could lose money potentially.
But then again, you're absolutely losing money if you're flaring gas. So
yeah, that's like with my client. It's out in the middle of nowhere, can't get power, so you have this gas, and you got 100 barrels a day. So you need to make the oil, but at the same time, you got all this gas you need to do something with. So you make power out of it. So it makes money, but it's a pain in the ass. And like from a Bitcoin standpoint, I'd just set the whole damn thing on fire within a week because I'd lose my damn mind. Like it ain't worth it. It absolutely isn't worth it, in my opinion. I don't know shit about fuck, but in my opinion, it ain't worth it.
What do y'all do with your gas up there, Moody?
Say that again.
What are y'all doing with your gas up there? Because you're quite a ways away from
Yeah, our closest gathering line is
civilization, right?
Right. Yeah. Our closest gathering line is like 20 miles
Thanks, I
away.
drink. Be right back.
And so what we do is, we use it as makeup gas and treaters and, fire treaters and, whatever needs heated up. We try to use as much of our well gas as possible. That way, because we don't vent anything, we don't flare anything. So we use all the gas that we make.
So you're producing a lot less gas than any of the shit I'm dealing with down here.
Oh yeah. Your GOR is drastically higher than ours. So our Montana field, for instance, it makes about 100 barrels a day and about 30 MCF, and we use all that gas in house, and so yeah, we don't have an excess of it, but we couldn't sell it if we did, so it wouldn't matter anyway.
I mean, I was pretty impressed when Hot Dog was telling us about his operation that he's got, a couple of little small aiming plants and everything
Yep.
as part of his operation, which I kind of always thought you had to do that at a really, really high scale to be able to make money off of it.
You don't. We used to have a well, it was a Wilcox well, and it was in South Texas, and it was making about 1.5 million cubic feet a day, and it was about 10% CO2 and about 10% H2S, and we had an amine plant right on location, and so all the gas before it hit sales went through that amine.
There's a operator down in our area that sets up, I think they call them like a bubble tower or something, to be able to recycle their gas and use that on site for gas lift, which is a pretty interesting concept.
There is, and there's tons of use of excess fuel gas. It doesn't have to be flared. Especially if you do have a high liquid well. Gas lift makes a lot of sense, especially if you do have that excess like sour or stuff that you can't put down the pipeline. It's way better to use it than flare.
I think the biggest problem that people run into with that is that every well is different, and getting everything fine-tuned, you have to have the right people and the right equipment and patience. And I don't think many operators are willing to spend the amount of money to have the right people and the right equipment and be patient.
No. Hell, a lot of them won't even spend money to fix stuff, much less make it better.
So gas lift helps get get liquid up the tubing, right? Could you just re-inject it like a gas disposal well, and like recharge the formation with that gas if you can't get rid of it?
You could, but the whole purpose of gas lift is it's basically a closed system, right? Because you have ports in your tubing, and you have your power at the surface, and you use that as power fluid. So it's basically a closed loop, and so it actually, you don't put much into formation at all in that situation when you have gas lift set up properly. You shouldn't be losing gas in the formation, and you wouldn't want to, because you end up messing with the relative permeability of your reservoir. And so you want to kind of use that gas, exactly what it's meant for.
Okay, so doing like an enhanced recovery like they do in a CO2 field doesn't make sense with gas.
Well, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't, and that would be like a huff and puff scenario, because you're treating near wellbore, formation, and when you put different gas in the formation that is producing the reservoir fluid, Yeah, you do run a risk of potential relative permeability issues.
You're using a lot of big words, sir.
Are you having a cold one on the road, WTX? Where are you guys at?
We just got into Oklahoma. We haven't made it to Lawton yet, so we're northbound or eastbound, something bound on I-44, headed towards Oklahoma City.
What are you going to
north,
Oklahoma City
eastbound.
for?
My parents live in Shawnee, so we're going to visit them. Buddy Stewart Way took us up with a sack of crawfish, or a place to buy a sack of crawfish in Oklahoma City. So we're going there in the morning, grab some crawfish, and tomorrow afternoon we're having a crawfish bowl in Shawnee to see how Okies take to mudbug.
Well, hell, I may come up. I didn't know you were cooking.
Yeah, we'll be there, man. Do you this is maybe an inside joke, but do you require turn by turn or directions, or do you need to drop pins?
Just drop him a pin. Use Apple Maps. That's his favorite.
Dude.
That's Tejano Brown's favorite too.
Like when she becomes a Terminator, an AI takes over. Series in Austin, I call her a lot of names. Speaking of, have you ever seen them protesting at the Capitol?
I mean, they're always protesting something. I think they're just professional protesters now.
It looks like they dragged a bunch of gypsy crackhead bitches from the trailer park out there to do the protesting. Just all nasty, disgusting looking people protesting.
You were in Austin, so
I'm from the trailer park. I'm telling you, it looks like they're paying people from the trailer park to come protest at the Capitol building. Not one normal llooking person over there. And I say that because I ain't normal looking. Like it's like the trailer park on the front lawn. Yeah, it's something.
How high do y'all think oil prices are going to go? All time high predictions for the next year.
Snoop Dogg.
Before GameStop or after?
Anybody?
Whoa. Yeah.
Man, last time I gave a prediction on this show, I said oil was going to 55, and I think everybody in Oklahoma that was on that just instantly put a hit out on me. Now that oil's double that, I don't know that I'm really qualified to answer this.
Yeah. Okay. So, are you sure that sack of crawfish is actually a sack of crawfish you're picking up tomorrow? Hey, remember when Trump said, "Meet me at the airport," right?
Right.
Meet me at the crawfish shop.
That's right.
I think
they're gonna feed you to the mud bugs.
No doubt. Dump me in Lake Hefner.
With AMC and GameStop, are we saying that anything's out of question? I mean, the market is so crazy now. I don't know why you're talking
about AMC and GameStop.
Because they go up and they have no reason to. Like the market.
We're talking about a fucking commodity here.
It don't matter. That's what I'm
AMC
saying.
and GameStop are not a commodity.
They can buy the shit now on E-Trade.
You think it goes higher than 140
on world reference
here, last all-time high?
I mean, I think we're gonna hit and exceed the all-time high. What? I think it was like 146, somewhere around there.
Yep, 147.
I started my first company. I was doing downhole tools. It went from 40 to 140, and I was shitting in high cotton. I mean, it was the best thing ever.
Is that inflation-based 147? Like that's the highest ever?
No, that's the highest, just dollar amount, just straight dollar.
That was what, 2014, right?
2008.
Yeah,
right before everything crashed.
Oh shit! 2014, it almost got to like 140, somewhere around there.
107.
I don't know if it got that high.
I remember it crashing in 2014.
Yeah, me too.
That was miserable.
Yeah.
That was rough.
I got laid off like right before we got married, and picked up another job for about 7 or 8 months, and then that job ended too. It was not a fun time.
No, it wasn't. My first week, I was sitting on a drilling rig, and our company man, he was watching his stocks, and everybody was just amazed at the trajectory of oil. This was in June of 2008, and we watched it go up. It touched 147, and that was mid June. So let's say no, actually it was late June. Let's say somewhere like June 30th or something. And then we TD'd July 4th, and it just proceeded to crash. And by November, it was down in the $70 range. We saw a 50% drop in price. Those were scary times. And then by January, we were down to 30. It was. I survived.
It went from sugar to shit overnight.
Yep,
without a doubt.
It did. It did. That was painful. That was the 14 crunch.
I only got lucky because Pemex had hedged for $90 a barrel that summer when it was 140, and everybody thought they were crazy for hedging at 90. And when it went down to 30, they were still drilling like crazy. And so I was sending all my equipment to Mexico, and that was the only reason I stayed alive at that time during that crash.
Yep. Anadarko was the same way. Anadarko hedged at like 130. And they basically hedged company wide. And so when that hit, Anadarko was probably, miles ahead of absolutely everybody else. But yeah, we're probably going to see a similar trajectory as that. But I think we definitely test all-time highs. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw $160 oil by midsummer.
Damn. I mean, at this rate, I don't disagree. I mean, 170 might be conservative.
It could be. It could be. And, the fundamentals, if you watch what the supply drop has been doing, I mean, it's, we took a 6 million barrel draw last week and like a 2 million barrel gasoline draw, that's huge. And, who knows what the next week is going to look like. I'll bet we see another big gasoline draw. I'll bet we see another crude draw.
But everybody's going to be, rejoicing at the 2 cents that this new SPR release is going to move the price, right? Because hopes and dreams, baby.
Well,
SPR release.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to be doing another fucking SPR release soon.
What was it, 50 million barrels?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, seriously. It's so that they can buy back at all-time highs and then crash the market again.
Well, that's it, and when Trump was talking about, buying super cheap crude, when we were in the doldrums of 2020, Trump was talking about buying, another 50 million barrels to put in the SPR, and they ended up not doing it. That in hindsight, it would have been a really, really savvy move. But now it's the worst type of economic policy that you could derive. It's just dumb.
So, okay, I understand the SPR. We're using a lot of salt dome storage and stuff like that. Is there any type of expiration on using those salt domes for storage? Or is it kind of one of those things where you set that up and you're just kind of good until you actually pull it back out?
When I looked at it, there's a loss. I mean, this was years. I don't think it's changed. But yeah, there's a loss to storage, salt dome storage.
Yeah, I think I read it's somewhere in the neighborhood of they think they can get 70% recovery back from what they pump into the salt domes. And a lot of the salt domes they use are shallow, and what they did is they pump fresh water into the salt dome to dissolve the salt, and so that it basically makes an underground tank. But absolutely. There's leak off, and then there's saturation in the salt, and yeah, so they look at 70% recovery at least from the existing underground storage they use.
But it's not a situation where like you need to cycle that oil in and out at every 10 years or anything like that, right?
No, consider it a tank.
Yeah. Okay.
With some loss, but
a slight permeability
yeah,
tank.
Yeah.
Low
yep,
permeability.
Yep.
Low
Yep.
permeability.
Extremely low permeability, but yeah, they do expect some sort of loss, but yeah, you don't have to recycle it, and you don't have to use enhanced recovery to pull out of SPR.
Did you hear about that salt dome that was hit? This was many years ago in Louisiana.
Oh, the one that blew that lake dry and blew that drilling rig and all those boats straight out of the fucking water.
It just drained the whole lake.
There are some pictures of that, like old school, like black and white photos and everything. And dude, those photos were taken hours or days afterwards, and it's fucking wild.
Oh yeah.
Still running the company here in West Texas.
They should make a new Sharknado movie based off of drilling into a salt dome. Underground shale sharks. Honestly, I think that's what Layman Life's gonna fucking go into the movie production business, because
you're gonna produce
that's a brilliant fucking idea, right? At $200 oil, everybody's gonna fucking go watch my movie at an AMC movie theater.
You can be the Quentin Tarantino of oil field horror movie.
I've got a lot of friends that are not in oil and gas that keep asking me how high I think gas prices are going to go. And they're talking about gas at the gas station, filling up your truck. And I keep telling them that people in the United States don't really understand how gas prices are contrived here in the US, and that $5 gas is pretty damn cheap when you look at costs of petroleum worldwide. So when people are talking about, oh my God, I can't believe that, gas is going to be $5 a gallon again. Like, shit, go to Europe, $15, $20 a gallon, when you...
It's like $4 or $5 a liter.
Yeah. It's wild, and people are worried about this. And I know that that's a huge concern politically for the Biden administration and everything. But at the same time, like, what the hell are you going to do? We tried to talk about this a little bit last week. Where are you going to find you need a couple more million barrels a day in the global supply. And it doesn't matter where it comes from, but that's what we're needing. I don't know where you can find it, because onshore American production is not going to skyrocket to the moon like it did previously. I don't think. We're not seeing that So we're not seeing that kind of activity. So where does it come from?
I had a good conversation with a friend today about that, because I keep thinking about it, and he put it pretty succinctly. He said, as efficient as we get when oil goes down to next to nothing, like we're turning over every stone to see, where we can save some money. The equal and opposite end of that, and by the way, my prediction when I was muted was, I think we're going to 200, totally unqualified, because that's the inflation adjusted equivalent from 2008.
Okay.
But I don't think you're wrong.
Think about this. As efficient as you were on one side, you're going to be just as inefficient on the other. And that can mean things like somebody crazy goes and does a big seismic shoot in Nevada, finally, like there's been all this talk of like, well, there's something in the desert we need to, but nobody's crazy enough to go do it. But they're crazy enough at $200 oil. So I think it's going to take those kinds of things, because drilling the shitty tier 3 shale acreage is not going to do it. That's been my fear. Or refracking the tier 1, that's not going to do it.
No, and limited development, outside existing basins, is not going to do it either. It's going to take something, if you want to really break it down, it's got to take some massive discovery that is, off the beaten path. Yeah, you're not going to find it in the Permian. You're not going to find it in the Anadarko. You're going to have to go. Yeah, Railroad Valley, Nevada that's a perfect example. You're going to have to go find a new Railroad Valley.
Is it technology?
Well, that's
I mean,
part
like
of it.
fracking increase production.
Yeah, but
is there
here's
some
the
new
other weird
technology
thing.
around the corner that could increase?
There is, but if you look at the industry today, it's made of guys that have spent the last 12 years drilling shale wells. The American explorer is retired, right? Because that's an artifact of what we were doing pre 2000s.
Right.
So that the guys with good experience actually exploring, using seismic, defining stuff.
Well, yeah, we haven't had wildcatting in its true form for a very long time.
Right.
Nobody's going out and just drilling test wells onshore.
Right.
Offshore, still, they are to a limited capacity. But one of my neighbors works. He's from Mexico City, and he works for a company. I think he said it was Arrow, and they make natural gas generators for large scale industrial applications and stuff like that. So he was telling me he goes to a lot of the sail and like offshore infrastructure oil and gas conferences all over the world. And he was telling me about how, I cannot remember the town, that there is a LNG port on the Pacific side of Mexico that is nearing completion with 2 terminals. And it is hooked up via pipeline to the United States, and that within the next 12 months, they will start exporting LNG from Mexico using U.S. gas to the Pacific region. And he was saying that when I was talking about where do you find that increase, he was kind of going through the history of production in Mexico, onshore and offshore. So I think they're at total production? They're at like 1 million barrels a day, 1.2, something like that, I think, as a country. And he was saying that, back in the day, 60 years ago, something like that, that Mexico's production was 4 or 5 million barrels a day. And they've completely destroyed the industry once they nationalized. Corruption, lack of maintenance, infrastructure, everything you can imagine. And that people in Mexico are finally starting to realize and try to turn the ship around. And he was talking about how with the increased awareness of supply chain issues with using Asia for all of our manufacturing, that he thinks a lot of that manufacturing process is going to come back to not just the United States, but the Americas, basically, to have the supply chain closer to us. And he was talking about how in order to build out the manufacturing capacity to do that, that they were looking at how they can reconfigure and repair their energy infrastructure. And he was talking about, he thinks that Mexico is going to start in the next 4 or 5 years producing oil and gas at a much higher capacity because they have reserves that have just been neglected, that can't be produced right now because of lack of investment, maintenance, what have you. And so, I mean, that's something that I hadn't really considered, but it was a interesting take. And, you know, what if Venezuela figures their shit out and gets rid of their stupid ass fucking corrupt government and actually starts producing oil again? I mean, maybe that's where you find your couple million barrels a day, you know?
I mean, I think, you know, you see it everywhere within the oil field. Like everything that was inefficient, now suddenly people are going through all kinds of effort to get more efficiency out of that because the price is up. And I think that probably includes Mexico and Venezuela. But I think like claims of we're going to double production in Mexico are total bullshit, honestly. And Venezuela's made similar claims in the past, like, oh yeah, we're going to rally the workers and things are going to go back to somewhat normal. But, you know, at a certain point, you just can't. It's you know, like Venezuela's problem is so much deeper than ours. But think about how, like, we just had a 2-year blip and we lost a pretty significant part of the workforce that we need now to get things rolling. Venezuela's got, I mean, they're totally F. Pemex, like, man, you know, more power to you. But, you know, are they going to get some incremental barrels? Sure. I bet they will. I would too if I was a state-owned national oil company. I'd be pumping some more oil right now too, but like not very efficiently, not what we need, you know.
I mean, like, if Trump was still in office, I'd say we should nationalize Mexico's oil for them, you know? And Trump would probably be like, fuck yeah, tear down that wall, you know? We're taking their oil because they're too stupid to do it themselves.
Yep. Well, and then Canada also, they're kind of a wild card, you know, huge oil and gas reserves. But
I wish that Alberto was on here to talk about that because he's got some very strong opinions.
He does. He does. And valid. But, you know, Canada, there's a lot of stranded oil and gas in Canada. You know, that would, you could add, you know, a lot of production if they went all out, you know, balls deep into development, and they made the effort to actually export it. You know, it would make a difference. But yeah, again, Venezuela is a wild card. You know, you never know how a reservoir is going to respond. You know, once it's been in years and years and years of disrepair, and how much capital it's going to take to get that back up and going. Brazil, you know, Brazil is another place that, you know, there's the potential for offshore development that could, you know, add another, you know, couple million barrels probably. But again, who knows if it's going to happen.
I think at $200 oil, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the governing regimes, government, whatever you want to call it, in those countries to have reform of some sort, because it is absolutely incredible the fall off that you can see historically each time one of those Latin American countries nationalizes their oil industry.
Yep.
I mean, the second they kick out all of the, you know, foreign experts, which, you know, the Middle East did to an extent also, but I think that they did it in a manner that allowed them a little bit more time to figure it out for themselves. And it's, I mean, shit, all you have to do is poke a damn hole in the Middle East, right? And oil just pops up out of the ground. There's not as much to it. I'm being somewhat facetious about that. But I think that it's a lot easier to manage your reservoirs and everything over there.
I think if I remember the 150 times I've tried to read the prize and dozed off, if I remember correctly, when they basically kicked like BP and Shell and what became the majors out, they did it in an orderly manner, like as opposed to Mexico that was like, hey, by the way, we're nationalized now, you can leave.
Be out by Tuesday.
Right. Hey, so not to take too much of a left turn, but I've been trying to understand this, and I try to read about it, but of course, like the industry does a terrible job of educating, and I can't find anything realistic. I mean, we literally have like the press secretary talking about Keystone Pipeline instead of Keystone XL. I'm trying to understand if the liberal talking point is Keystone XL, if we're being proper, was never going to bring barrels that we needed anyway to market. I think that at one point in time that might have been close to accurate, but the truth is now, like we need the heavy oil that they could have provided. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I can chime in there.
Yep.
Oh yeah, there's 90s.
I can chime in there. So the issue is that the industry over time shrank here on the Gulf Coast. And as someone who is sitting on the Gulf Coast, watching them still, close down refineries, refurbish them to biodiesel facilities, it just wasn't needed. We're getting what we need through the Keystone pipeline. And when people mix up the conversation over the XL versus the Keystone, I remind them all the time, the Keystone is pumping and it is doing a marvelous job. And on top of that, it just was extra. And it was a big fight for something that I don't know we really needed per se, other than to have the optionality of that extra line coming in from the Western provinces. But it's getting here one way or another. That was another conversation I had with my dad. He was mad at Justin Trudeau for saying that they aren't going to import or use Russian oil in Canada. And he was saying that he was watching the news or Fox News or whatever news he was listening to, and they were like laughing because they don't use it. The thing is, they were using it in order to use it as cutter for their bitumen as well as their heavy in order to pump down the Keystone. They can find other material, right? But they were using that because it was a cheap alternative to what else was in the marketplace, right? So, when I see what's going on with Cushing and how low their levels are, I don't get excited about that. That stuff is getting pumped straight down to the Gulf Coast where it's being utilized now, and we've built the tank space from here to Louisiana to take that in because that's what the Keystone did. It literally allowed it to just keep flowing down here and put it where we need it, on the Gulf Coast where we can refine it and then move it in multiple ways, whether it be pipeline, rail, or boat. But I think people get mixed up on that and they want to yell and they want to scream about it. It's not as big of a deal as what they try to make it out as. It's not something to go wild about, in my opinion.
I'll say this, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for Colin Moody saying this. If they ever shut down the Keystone Light pipeline, he's going to war.
Yes. Yep.
I think Gulf Coast will go with you.
Yeah, it would be a really, really bad day.
The refinery area in particular will revolt.
Yeah, we have to have that. That's the flow now. I mean, that's the pipeline. And whether it's coming in from the Gulf Coast or it's coming in from the Keystone area, through the Nederland Port Arthur corridor, I mean, it's getting to Houston. It's getting to Louisiana. I mean, you can pull those maps and see that we can get crude. WCS is what we call it, the blend from Canada, and that's the way it happens. And if it doesn't come down that way, it comes through tank cars. I mean, they're going to get it here one way or another. And if they don't get it that way, they'll get it through boat. I mean, that's what they were doing prior to the Keystone. It's just making it a lot easier inaccessible. My problem is controlling Canada and letting them not control their pumping. And what they had done prior to 2021 was control the amount that they were putting out, and we were having to, on the Gulf Coast, really scramble to find heavy barrels. That's just not happening anymore. It's coming from Canada. That's our main supplier at this point. And if you pull the charts or look at what Sankey had put out, you can see Mexican as well as, I think it was Saudi Arabia, are those Emirate countries. We're using less of their barrels and more of finally Canada again because Canada is pumping. And that's in the IEA or IEA chart.
So with the deal about banning Russian oil or whatever, and unfortunately it's Republicans and now Nancy Pelosi calling for that shit. Is that gonna change jack shit here in the United States?
I think it changes the balance and the cost of some crudes versus others, but it definitely, if people want to talk about Iran and others coming in, that's just where the barrels are going to come from. I mean, they're the second largest oil producer in the world, so they were the the gorilla at the table. They could push some stuff around, but at this point, I mean, I'm curious if China's going to buy all their crude, because clearly no one wants it. And Shell, touched the hot plate today and picked up some crude. So that's got me very curious. Who's their friend right now? Who's daddy's friend? I think they thought everybody was their friend, and that's just not true. China's not their friend.
Well,
Obviously, or they'd be buying the negative crude.
I don't
Either
know
that or all their tanks are full.
I don't know that China is even willing to do that, because that's now not just pissing off the United States, which, again, God, I fucking hate to keep saying this, but Trump fixes this. Or, it wouldn't have happened, I don't think. At least not the same way. But you're not just pissing off the United States if you do that now. You're pissing off the fucking world. And I think that China is savvy enough to understand that. So if there was a way they could do it without really having, like, they were buying Iranian oil for a long time when Iranian oil was embargoed. So I'm not saying they wouldn't do a similar situation, but I don't think that they would go outright and say all of a sudden, hey, yeah, we're going to buy all the excess.
I don't know if Trump fixes this, though, because under that administration, we still lost millions of barrels of refining capacity. Even if you make oil cheaper at this point, I almost wonder if there's a deficit of actual refining capacity for what we need in this world.
I was referring to the Russia-China problem.
Yeah, but I just don't know how we fix this. It's like we're in a death spiral at this point. Does that make sense? Like, we need barrels, but the barrels might not be there. At the same time, y'all know that a lot of the ducts have been used. A lot of the ability for companies to go and drill takes time. I mean, are we behind the eight ball at this point and screwed?
We talked about it last year. It's got to come from offshore. And I know that the lead time on those projects is much greater than, if you're just drilling onshore. But the investment has to come. It's got to be the majors. And there's a lot of, I think, capacity still in a lot of those reservoirs that, because of the amount of money required to set up the infrastructure to produce it, it hasn't been done. But hey, Colin, does $200 oil fix that?
Yes. $200 oil makes a huge difference, because
but how fast can it fix it?
And that's why. Well, it's
going to take a while.
It's going to take a while. Yeah, but they rarely bust on offshore wells, right? They always find hydrocarbon. It's just a matter of, if it's economic.
Cost of production.
Yep. And $200 oil, fixes that problem. All of a sudden you have before, at $60 oil, a 30 million barrel field is, probably marginal. At $100 oil, it's not marginal anymore. At $200 oil, it is it's economic. It's economic all day. But, That's the crux about offshore is that, the capacity is there, but, it's got to
takes
have a dollar
years.
amount. Yep. And it's timing.
So I think sustained $100 oil is going to spur a lot of that investment, because looking on further down the road, like 90s was just talking about, like the problem is not going to solve itself. Demand is not going to overnight just disappear. It can't.
Well, it did artificially in 2020, but if the world's moving forward at its normal pace and normal activities, yeah, demand is not going to fall. We're going to see demand increase.
But even in 2020, with the steep drop, all of a sudden it started recovering towards the end of 2020. Like, what I'm saying is you're not going to have a sustained drop for ever. So you can have a drop in demand, but we don't have the infrastructure to produce enough energy off of renewables or whatever other source you're going to come up with currently to not go back to fossil fuels.
And I don't think it's the same. I never like saying it's different this time or it's not different, but I really think the retirees are not going to stop driving. They're not going to stop their life. And I think that we just didn't calculate that into what Americans were going to need, their energy needs were going to be in their twilight years. And I'm seeing some amazing crack spreads on the Gulf Coast, guys. This is going to get wild, and we're not even into summer driving season.
No.
And we've been pushing units on the Gulf Coast for almost 2 years, maybe 6 months to a year, more than we need to. This gets wild as we get to summertime when it's hot, when it's most needed. Those barrels are needed. The refined barrels are needed. This gets interesting. So we may look at the numbers today on Oxy or Exxon and say, wow, that's crazy. It may get crazier.
So I don't know, maybe air travel is what decreases in demand. I don't think that internal combustion engines are going to decrease probably for the next 15, 20 years in terms of demand. And the problem is, they make cars so fucking efficient now, they last longer. So people aren't, trading them in for a Tesla or whatever. You got a 15-year-old truck that still runs. You maintain it. Why the fuck are you going to get rid of it?
Well, and especially at the cost to, you're not going to drop $80K on a Tesla if you're, 1999 GMC still runs.
And shit, or the subsidies, if they dropped the subsidies on electric vehicles, not a single person in this country, except for billionaires, would be buying them.
No. They don't have the practicality. It's at least now it doesn't make sense.
Well, and I think the argument is great where they keep saying, well, we just need more people to switch to them, and then it makes sense. Then we'll have the infrastructure to actually drive, all the way to California without having to map out where you're going to stop and charge.
But we can't do that because we're in a commodity cycle that's crazy, and so even the EV and the copper and that build out is going to be insanely expensive. And this is so it's exciting, really, to see it.
Where does the power come from that you put into the battery?
The already stressed grid.
Look,
correct.
Hopes and prayers will get us to where we need to go, guys.
Well,
hey, there's a good segue.
I posted that meme. Jesus, take the wheel. Me and Hound Dog are riding with Jesus right now. He'll provide it. He'll take care of oil prices.
I'm gonna drop this stinker and stick around for a minute, but I gotta go. So one thing that's really fascinating to me, and it's a weird kind of origin story. So years ago, in a former life, I was at work, and we took a bunch of foreign service officers. It was in Houston. Took a bunch of foreign service officers to the Baker Institute of Public Policy, and I got to do this for a couple of years. We go sit down to a bunch, think tank nonsense. Amy Myers Jaffe was the name of the lady. I remember, and this was 2004, so nearly 20 years ago. We're talking about LNG trains and how expensive they were, how eventually they were going to be necessary, but how that the United States was totally misguided in thinking that we would ever export LNG from the United States to Europe to take advantage of the spread there. And it's fascinating to me that that's on the brink of happening when you've got Europe that wants to totally extricate itself from Russia. Like, nobody's really talking about it because everybody hates natural gas so much. I happen to still be a fan. And man, 100 plus $200 barrel oil is a great story, but having $20 natty like as a chaser would be freaking phenomenal. Having $10 natty alone sustained would be huge for this country. And I'm just curious, like why we're not. I know, so there is lead time in that too. I know that who's the Cherokee?
Chenier.
No, is it Chenier? Who's the guy? I can't think of the name. He's been trying to get some trains built out of Orange, or like whatever the port is north of Houston, like Beaumont area. I know they take a while to build. And I know
You're waiting for 90s to chime in with all the knowledge, right?
Yeah, it's in the Port Arthur, Cameron. Yeah, that area right there in the Port Arthur, right between Louisiana and Port Arthur.
I mean, I feel like I hate that I'm forgetting the name of his group. It's like Sufi. He's got I think it's an Iranian guy.
Supac? Is it like SOPC or whatever?
No. Anyway, this is kind of like their moment, to get LNG on the way to Europe. And I know we've already started doing it, which gives me hope, but like, that's a pretty amazing prospect. To back it up, like the argument in 2004, whenever it was essentially there's no way the United States can ever compete with gas coming from the Middle East. Like, they're literally right there. They can ship, which is, I don't understand that enough, but I'm sure that's partially true. Hey, we've got gas that we can supply, but if you're Germany, why would you trade Russia for, UAE or Saudi at this point? Like, no, we'll trade with the United States even if it costs us 2x at this point.
Well, as long as we don't have any more mean tweets, right?
Right.
What's wild is in that Port Arthur corridor, they had actually built those heaters in that system to bring natural gas in, and they had to rebuild a couple of trains to push natural gas out.
Yeah, no, that was the thing. Remember, because think about 2007.
My uncle made money both coming and going. It was great.
Think about 2007. Natural gas was what, 12? I think it got to like $14 an MCF, and like there was the feeling in the United States that we had screwed up by switching to natural gas.
Well, the ghost of Aubrey is both like hanging his head in shame and clapping at the same time about this conversation, because he was kind of playing it both ways. But it's the same situation with the terminals going out of Mexico on the Pacific coast. So we're going to be exporting LNG both directions. Obviously a more logical port to send our natural gas would be through California. But seeing as California is run by communists right now, we're sending it through Mexico. But either way, it's going to be going both directions from North America. And I keep wondering, how much natural gas could we potentially be exporting, and how much is it that Europe actually needs? if Russia were completely out of the picture, which I don't think that Russia will be completely out of the picture forever, because of economics, like, would we ever actually be able to ship enough LNG to Europe? I don't think that we could.
I don't, how big are those trains? Are they like a TCF? I don't know enough about it.
They're
that's a great
big,
question.
and they don't just put one; they put 2 or 3. I think is what they put there in the Golden Pass area, as they call it. But it's they move some weight. But I mean, there's more of them planned on the Texas coast. The issue is that the price wasn't there. The price is there now, so I wonder if the
Well,
Buffetts and the others start
but
moving
then
towards finally putting
there's
steel in the ground.
there's also the permitting issue, because for Cheniere, it took damn near a decade for them to get all of the approvals and everything for what they needed to do. And I think that landscape is something that you can't price in, because it is always shifting administration to administration, and even within administrations, shifting policies. I don't see the Democrats, even as much sense as it makes, getting on board with using and producing more natural gas, because yeah, it's great to set up more terminals to export more, but you're going to have to also produce more.
See, and I see them finally shifting over to some hydrocarbon use and pushing their dates out from 2030 to 2050, and actually getting on board a majority of them, not all of them, to actually put some protection in place, because they see what they need to do in order to keep their dream alive for the electrification of transportation, in my mind.
I don't know that they're that logical. I really want to hope that they are. I just don't know that they see that far ahead, is the problem.
And see, I don't think they get the votes to stay around if they don't do it. So I'm thinking that they become politicians and ultimately decide what's best for their interest,
Yeah,
as well
but
as
at the
the
same
country.
time, when they can just manufacture the votes, I mean, they're bringing in people from other countries and all kinds of shit, to the point that I don't know, man. With the election of Joe Biden, I think our voting system is completely fucked and broken, and I don't know that there is actually a way for anyone to fix it. So, I was talking to buddies, Republicans and Democrats alike, about how scary a prospect that is when our voting system just doesn't work. And we saw it nationally. We saw it, on center stage with Georgia and a couple other places. And so what you're talking about, saying they don't have the votes if they don't do this, I think that 10 years ago, yeah, that's correct. But I don't know that that's actually a deterrent to their agenda anymore.
And that's 90s. I guess I'm optimistic. I think that oftentimes
I want to be optimistic too.
We want to believe that there must be something wrong because the politician or the belief isn't held by others. But I think they'll get it right in the long run.
What do you think about all that, Colin?
Well, it is interesting, and I'm pretty apolitical, but as far as, I think if you hit a voter hard enough, with actual economics, I think that kind of changes the narrative, and it shifts the focus from the political narrative to like true economics. If you got people who pay $700-800 a month for heating bills, that's a needle mover, right? And I think eventually, we're going to get back to that where like economics are going to be the driver of some political moves. And you'll see it in Europe because I think, depending on how the whole Ukraine Russia thing works out, Europe is going to look to find another source for their fuel, and they're going to look for another source of their power. And maybe the U.S. can provide that stopgap, but Europe is not going to change their lifestyle, and they still have to live. They have rough winters in Europe. And so I think that, the economics that are eventually going to drive change and kind of go back to, reliable energy, which comes from hydrocarbon, and that's just a fact. It's got to come from somewhere. And with Germany,
is there any chance of a transatlantic natural gas pipeline?
that is a really, really interesting idea. And I think, it makes a lot of sense. There are places on the East Coast.
How big of a fucking pipeline are you going to need to supply Europe with the natural gas they need?
Yeah, what does Europe use a day? That's I have no idea, and I have no idea what even the United States uses a day for natural gas. But it would make a ton of sense. But I don't know if in today's political atmosphere you could ever, if you even broach the subject, you'd probably get hung.
Okay, well then let's just shoot the natural gas out into space, and then Europe will just beam it back down.
I like that.
That sounds like a solar panel idea. Now you're in the AOC world. But, really, guys, stability breeds dreams, and instability breeds common sense. And I think that's where we are at this point. We've gone so far into the dreamland that this instability is starting to bring common sense back to what can we do right now? What do we have? And how do we do with what we've got? And start looking at fixing the problems that are real. And the real problem is we just don't have the energy that they promised. And so they're going to have to go sit in the corner for a while and think about their life.
I think we can fix our problems, but I think the real issue is the global infrastructure. And if the United States wanted to, and again, I hate doing this because I really wasn't that big of a fan of Trump. The America First attitude, I know a lot of people tried to turn that into some kind of racist nationalist idea, but if the United States actually looks out for itself first before we start trying to take care of the rest of the world, I think we have everything that we need here. And being a capitalist country, there's always going to be people who are trying to make money off of solving the problems overseas. But if the Democrats or even Republicans at some point were to restrict exports again, does that change the picture for you two guys?
I think they need to give a long lead time. Exports will be cut off in 3 years. Start looking at splitters or other options on the Gulf Coast or in the United States in order to properly provide the energy we need, as well as do what's necessary to spend the capex. But you can't do it tomorrow. Anybody that says that we're going to do that tomorrow is stupid. They can't. There's nowhere to. I'm choking on it right now on the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is no doubt the U.S. could be totally self-sufficient. We produce, an excess of everything that we use and we need. But, it's, again, economics is the driver. It's going to have to come from a government mandate, say, no more exports. Yeah, and you would need tons of lead time. And I don't think it would last an administration, right? Because
how long was how long was the export ban in place? Because that was
Decades. What, 30, 40
Yeah.
years, guys? What was it?
Yeah.
That was
it
a long
Nixon
fucking
or
time.
was it Lyndon B. Johnson?
It was Nixon, right? So it was
I
yeah,
thought
it
it was
was at
Carter
least-
for some reason, or maybe that's when they started talking about it.
yeah, something. It was in the 70s.
I think you're right. It was Carter because they had come off of the subsidies of Nixon, and remember that guns, butter, and whatever it was when they were subsidizing food that didn't work out. We were talking about economics. They're talking about that crap again, and it's not going to work.
I mean, it's one of those things that I think now the cat's out of the bag. I don't think you can really go back to the, and it's funny because back then I don't think that was perceived as an isolationist move. Everybody kind of thought this peak oil idea was real and that we were going to, for the rest of our existence, be a importer. And did shale change that?
You know what would be really funny? I think it was Obama and Biden that actually raised the export ban. I wonder if it would be hilarious to me if Biden has to reinstate the ban. That would be an interesting turn of events.
Where he's like, my former colleague Barack Obama made a mistake.
We made a bad decision. We made bad. We made good now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shale changed the game. There's no doubt. The impact that it had. It increased domestic production by 6 million barrels a day.
As much as everybody loves to hate on it, it definitely changed the game.
It did. Yeah, you can't deny it either. Because it's fact.
Even Art Berman would have a hard time providing statistics to show otherwise.
He would make it up, so it wouldn't matter.
Well, I'm gonna have to wrap up here, but appreciate you guys hopping on with us, and as always, had a great time talking about everything here, and I think we solved pretty much all of the global problems except for all of the global problems.
Well, we tried.
We got another week next week.
I mean, as long as that Keystone Light pipeline continues to flow, everybody's going to be A-okay, right?
For this weekend, yes.
Well, good to talk with you guys again, and we'll catch up with y'all next week.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, buddy.
Yep. See you later, Landman.